You probably have heard of the line, lighting is key. And for photography, that's the most important thing, lighting. Right now, good lighting. If I do this, bad lighting. And that's what I'm gonna explain to you today. First, I'm gonna explain how the basics of a camera works, and then I'm gonna give you some tips how to photograph inside of a place and outside of a place. This is not going to be much of an exploring video, this is going to be more of a basics of photography video. So if you want more videos like this, leave a comment down below and subscribe. Welcome back to the channel, guys. This was a very requested video. You guys want to know how I take my photos. But in order for you to know how I take my pictures, you first have to learn basics of a camera and photography, and then I'm gonna give you tips and tricks that I use, and then the editing part. First of all, I'm gonna explain you the basics of a camera. You need to understand what is ISO, aperture, speed shutter, and a little thing that most cameras have, the light meter, for you to know if you have the perfect light. I'm gonna be using my Nikon FE2. It's an analog camera. I don't have another digital camera, so I'm gonna explain to you the basics of the camera with this one and with mine. And I'm gonna give you examples. I'm gonna give you a lot of information for you to, if you need any help, come back to this video and watch it. First of all, I'm gonna explain what ISO is. ISO is the sensitivity of your camera sensor. So basically, what it does is, if you have a lower ISO, means that your sensor is not as much sensitive to the light. But if you have a higher ISO, your sensor is most sensitive to the light, which means you're gonna capture more light. But having the ISO higher comes with more noise. Your photo will start appearing with more grain, more noise. If you have a lower ISO, you have less noise, almost none. Just for you to understand the basics, I took 3 photos, one with 100 ISO, the other one had 800 ISO, and the last one at 3200 ISO. And in my camera, it's really easy. The ISO goes up and destroys my photos. You can see perfectly the ISO and the noise that the photo has. And if I go even more up the scale, we'll have more noise. And this is great if you don't have enough light, but this is the last resort you should use. The second thing I'm gonna show it to you, it's the aperture. It works in f-stops. Aperture is the size of your lens opening. How open your blades from your lenses are. If you have a lower f-stop, the bigger is going to be the opening, which is going to be more light coming into the lenses. If you have a higher f-stop, the hole is going to be smaller and less light will come in. And this can be a little tricky to understand because it's the opposite, but try to remember, as low as you can, it's going to be more light. As higher as the f-stop is, it's going to be less light. But that's not the only thing that aperture controls. Aperture also controls depth of field, which is how much focus is in the area you focused on. So for example, if I use a smaller f-stop, my focus area is going to be really small, it's going to be thin. But if I have a higher f-stop, the depth of field is going to be bigger. So for example, if you're photographing a landscape, you're going to put your f-stop higher so you have more depth of field. But if you're photographing an object or a person, you want to take a portrait, you're going to put your f-stop as low as you can so you have less depth of field. And for you to understand in practice what I'm saying in theory, I'm going to use 4 pictures. So for the first image, I'm going to use f2.0. For the second image, I'm going to use f6.3. For the third image, I'm going to use f11. And for the final image, I'm going to put all the way up until 22. And you see immediately how the depth of field work. But you have to understand, the lower is the size of your aperture, less light will come in because the hole is more closed. And that's where shutter speed enters. Now talking about shutter speed, which is basically how much time is your shutter open, I'm gonna give you an example just for you to understand. I'm gonna pop this up, I'm gonna put 2 seconds. You see, this is how much light comes in through the sensor of your camera in seconds. This works in seconds. And you may be asking, what does this do? Shutter speed controls the motion of the object you're filming. If you want a static photo, you put a higher number. If you want motion or you need more time to take a picture, you put less time. I'll give you some tips at the end, how can you control the shutter speed better, because it's really helpful if you have a tripod. And I'm going to give you 4 examples, and I'm going to try to run at the same speed so you can actually see what this does. The first one is going to be in 1/800, the second picture is going to be in 250, the third picture in 100, and the fourth picture is going to be in 50. And as you can see, higher speed means less motion blur, lower speed means more motion blur. If I keep going down and down and down, it's gonna be more and more blurred. So that's the basics of a camera. Now let's grab all of these things and let's talk about the light meter. Most cameras nowadays, and even phones, have a light meter. Light meter is the little bar you see on the cameras which has a minus, a plus, and a straight line on the middle. And this light meter is only to help you to know the right lighting for the scene or the photo you're taking. And that line in the middle is supposed to be the perfect lighting for the capture you're trying to take. How this light meter works, it's pretty basic and pretty straightforward. Basically, if you have the line on the minus side, it means your photo has less light. If your stripe is more on the plus side, it means that you have more light. So the center is supposed to be the perfect lighting for your photo. And to understand a little bit how the light meter works, it basically takes the brightest scene of your photo and the darkest scene of your photo, and it gives you this middle, this between the brightest side and darkest side of your photo. So with all of this said, if you start to understand your camera and how it works, you will start to make amazing photos. And if it's not coming out the way you want, you will understand and you can fix it pretty easily if you follow these things. I'm gonna do a recap of all of this, and I'm gonna give you a little graphic for you to understand, and you can screenshot it in 3, 2, 1, screenshot it. All of this is to help you, guide you if you need to know what to change to make your photo better. But I'm gonna recap a little bit and fast for you. ISO. If you have a lower ISO, means that your camera sensor is gonna read less light, which is gonna give you less noise. If you have a higher ISO, your camera sensor is gonna read more light, which is gonna give you more noise. Aperture works in f-stops. As lower is the f-stop, as bigger is the opening, which means more light comes in, but you have less depth of field. If you have a higher f-stop, you're gonna have a little small hole, which means that less light is gonna come in, but you're gonna have more depth of field. Shutter speed. The lowest your shutter speed is, more motion blur you're gonna have. The highest your shutter speed is, less motion blur you're gonna have. Now let's put all of this in practice, but first let me explain you the order you're gonna change your things. You took a photo and the photo is too dark and you don't know what to change. First thing you're gonna see is the speed shutter. See if you can put the speed shutter lower. If you can't, move to the aperture. Put the aperture as low as you can so more light will come in through the lenses. And the last thing you're gonna change is the ISO. If you can't change the aperture or the speed shutter, you're gonna put your ISO higher. Just be careful because it's gonna have more noise. And now imagine you took a really bright photo and you don't know what to change first. First things first, you're gonna look at your ISO and you're gonna put as lower as you can. Still, if the image is too bright, you're gonna put a higher speed shutter so less light will come in. And even if it's too bright, you're gonna put your aperture a little bit higher until it's good. This is the basics to understand the camera and how it works. All of this is in manual. If you photograph in automatic, forget everything that I said, but try to use it manual. And if you're still convinced that the automatic is better, just try it out if you can. And if you do try these tips that I'm gonna give you right now, please send me on Twitter, Instagram, DM me, I don't care, just let me know. I wanna see your results if you use my tips and tricks. So now let's go outside because I wanna give you 5 tips. How can you photograph outside and inside of an abandoned place? Let's go. First, I want to preface that I only use natural light, and I'm going to explain the inside and outside because sometimes it's different. First thing, lighting. You remember what I said in the beginning of the video? Lighting is key, and it's true. Look at this. You see the building, but the building doesn't have the sun directly on him. It's on the side. So this is bad lighting because half of the building is on the shadow. So what you're gonna do is try to get an angle with more light. You don't want to take a photo of a building in a shadow. First of all, it's really hard to edit, and second of all, it's not pretty. Second tip for you to have amazing photos, it's lower speed. More specifically, using a tripod to take your photos. This way you have way more time. You have the time you want to take a perfect photo. If you're photographing, for example, this scenario, you have nothing is gonna move, so you have as much time as you want. As you know, speed shutter controls the speed, so you're gonna put the speed really low because you have a tripod and it's steady, and you're gonna put your aperture higher so you have more depth of field. So what this does is you're gonna have this whole thing focused, and it's gonna take maybe 1, 2, 3 seconds, but it's gonna have a perfect photo. Try it. And this tip works outside and inside. Landscapes, it's amazing if you have a tripod and time for you to have the biggest depth of field. But if you're photographing an object or a portrait, you're not gonna need a tripod most of the time. So you'll just go there, take a normal picture and keep going. This is just a tip for you to have more depth of field, so use a tripod every chance you get to take amazing sharp photos. Third tip, angles. Every time you're photographing a place, you always have to look different at the place. But when I say angles, I'm not talking about those horrible photos of buildings and distortions of the buildings. I learned a thing in school, and that stuck in my head for a long time, is if an architect made the building straight, you will have to take the photo of the building straight, because the building is not tilted or curved, it's straight. Nowadays buildings have totally different shapes, but for the most part they are straight. So try to make angles, but try to keep the building as straight as you can. I'm gonna give you 3 examples of photos you shouldn't take because the angles are not pretty. You shouldn't use these angles, at least for these houses. It can be different for every place, of course. And I'm gonna give you 3 photos of good angles you should use while photographing these abandoned places. I'm not saying to not make angles, I'm just saying try to make the buildings look nice and clean. Okay, third tip, and I don't have a tripod because I'm in the middle of the street, but this tip is shoot through something. Some abandoned buildings are not that interesting, and even some objects. Sometimes we are photographing objects and they're just an object there. So what you could do is, for example, take a leaf or a plant and put on the corners of the photo so everything centers around the building you're photographing, the same as an object or a person. So this tip is more for outside, not inside. For example, I'm not gonna take a picture because the sun is not right, like the building is on the shadow, so this is not perfect. I have to wait a few hours for the sun to go around. You seeing this? This is a totally okay photo, it's great, but if you just did something, or even like this, with the tips that I gave you about aperture and speed shutter, if you have a tripod you can do something like this. I think I'm gonna wait 2 or 3 more hours until the sun goes around so I can photograph the building with the proper light, and then I will show you the final result of me photographing this building through something. Okay, 2 hours later, the sun is shining on the building. As you can see, it's not quite there yet, but it's still good. And I like the shadows, they make leading lines, so it's really cool. So I'm gonna try and put something around here. And I also am gonna try to make a little photo from here because it's up the road. So and that's a little bit of what you can do to make your photos a little bit more interesting. And last but not least, this is one of the most important rules in photography, the rule of thirds. It's basically these 4 lines that divide a picture and you can read it. For example, now this doesn't have rule of thirds. This is just a plain image, like a straightforward image, which is okay. But if you want to make a dynamic photo, you will do this. It may not seem like it changed much, but you read completely different the way you see the photo. Right now, you see that part and me. You don't see the corners or the rest. You see the rule of thirds, the points. The points between the lines is the place you want to put your subject so people look at it. Most of my photos have always a point where you can focus. I don't like to make everything bright. I like you to look at my photo and focus just on a point, because I don't want you to see all the rest, it's just on the point. And right now, you're more focused on this area because all of the balance of the picture is going down that way. And I'm gonna give you a bonus, try to use leading lines. I don't know if you can see, but everything in here is leading to that point. Every line is leading to that light, and that helps you read the photo. We read the photo like we're reading text. We start from the right to the left. If you have your point, even if it's on the right or the left side, those leading lines will help you read better the photo. And also, light helps you read the photo. For example, I have this light coming in and you can see like these parts because you look more at the point of the light. But right now I have the other one, which is stronger than this one. So what your brain does, you'll read this first and then immediately goes back to that and you focus on that point. So don't forget to try to imagine the rule of thirds. Most cameras and phones have that, so you just put on the settings the rule of thirds and you will have like more readable pictures like this one. And with all of that said, I hope you make amazing photos. Like I said, if you use my tips and tricks, just let me know. I really want to see you guys using my tips and tricks. I hope you understand what I said and I hope I explained it well. I'm sorry if this was not the video you're hoping for. Normally I do this type of videos, urbexes, but I decided to do a photography video because a lot of people ask me, because my photos are not the normal. Maybe next time I'll do more of a personal photography choices that I make while photographing. So if you want that, please leave it down in the description. This farmhouse is not much. This is just... this is literally the only part of this farmhouse that it's kind of pretty. It's this ceiling. It was a chapel, you see, but it's all destroyed. All this farmhouse is destroyed, like you saw in the photos. So it's not much of an exploring video, but it was really pretty to do a photography video, so that's why I came here. I hope I explained everything well and you will understand what I said. I don't know if I did that right, but I hope so, and I hope you like it. If you do, please leave a like, comment down below what you think about this type of videos, these photography videos. I love photography. As you could see, like, this is literally my passion and I'm really into it. Like, I don't know what I do without photography. And any questions you have about photography, any questions, it might be dumb questions, but any questions you have, just leave it down in the comments. And I will really appreciate it. I normally don't ask for this, but I'll really appreciate it if you share this video. I'm just glad that I did my first photography video. It's just amazing. And if you're not subscribed and you want to see more of these things, subscribe down below and hit the bell notification to get notified every time I post. And I'll see you on the next one. Ciao. I just noticed one thing now. I didn't do this, I hate graffitis, but ES, forgotten. There's a fucking, okay, word. I was trying to make a joke, it didn't work. If you have a lower f-stop, the bigger is the hole. The rule of thirds. I think I'm gonna do like this, like this, like this, like this. So what you're gonna do is put the speed lower. The speed lower. Yes, the speed lower. Okay. Não consigo concentrar. And I'll see you on the next one. And and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Ciao. I opened this so much. It's the third time that I opened this. Okay. And that's a little bit of what you can do to make your photos a little bit more interesting. Now talking about shutter speed. Basically, nervos, não consigo concentrar. Oh god, my arm. How much time is your shutter open? 2 seconds? Oh fuck. Damn it! Now I have to stop you. And for you to understand a little bit what I'm gonna... And I'll see you on the next one. Ciao! And I'm gonna try to run at the same speed. It's the same seed. Welcome back to my channel. To the channel. Oh my god, eu não me consigo concentrar. Não me sais daqui de cima.